Summertime. An abundance of green. Nature is buzzing all around, and so is the heat and humidity, as well as an endless chain of long days and pleasant nights. The key is to stay cool, and one of the best ways is to install a screen door so you get the airflow without mosquitoes, flies and all the other critters. I decided to build one that closes using magnets, and for the handle I used what I had laying around in my shed. For wood I used 2x4s. I added a roll of mesh screen, some screws, some glues, and I worked with some very basic tools. So for this build I'm using 2x4s that I cut in strips of about 1 inch thick. I do this using the guide on my circle saw. I use the carpenter square to quickly cut it off, and I do this without attaching a clamp because it's way quicker. I need more wood, so I measure another length of 2x4 that I had laying around and that I used for previous projects. Some more cutting. I had to shift the 2x4 in order to make space so I could continue cutting the full length. That's what you see me do here. Some more strips on the other side. So the long pieces are gonna be 195, the short pieces are gonna be 85. These lengths are in centimeters. So I'm using big blocks to keep everything in place. It's the best I can do. I have limited resources at the time. So next I'm measuring the finger joints. So they're gonna be 4 centimeters. And I have used finger joints in the past, and in my opinion it's an easy and pretty strong way to connect pieces of wood. It also looks pretty neat. So the key is to cut next to the markings. That's very important because pieces will then be hard to join and they will be strong. I'm using a very old school carpenter pencil. I would like to shift to a pencil with a thinner head, but this is what I have. These are my resources. So I'm repeating on the other side, and the markings seem rough, but later on I will label them A, B, C, D, and then they will line up together. So I clamped a leftover piece as support for the jigsaw. That makes it way easier to cut straight, because else it's gonna slide to the side and you will not have a straight cut. So I repeat on the other side. And it takes quite a bit of time, but you have to do it precise, because else it will not come out properly. Because the pieces it needs to be hard to fit them together. If it's easy to fit them together, then it's too loose and it will not hold up over time. So moving the camera to the setup. So these are the long pieces that I cut earlier, as well as the mesh screen and the other things I'm going to use. So this is where I make the markings A, B, C, D. So I can match them together and I can be sure that they are a tight fit. So I repeat it on the other side. C, C, D, D. So I'm double checking. You know, they always say like measure 3 times, cut 1 time. So that's always what I'm sticking to, or at least I try. B and B. And the secret really is to cut next to the line, because then it will be hard to put the pieces together and you will get a tight fit. And again, you can see I use an old piece of 2x4 as a support to make like the straight cut. So repeat with part B. And it almost looks like the blade is moving in slow motion, right? So it's pretty. It was pretty dry this time of year when I taped this. The grass is extremely dry. We have a wet season and a dry season. This was taped during the dry season. Now, and also I always have limited time available to build things because I'm a family man, I have 2 boys, and I can take 1 day usually for a project, and that's really stretching it. So yeah, that's it. So here you see me putting on glue. The glue dried out. It's hard to take out of the tube. So yeah, improvising right here. Putting the pieces together, and I will use the carpenter square to make sure that it's a 90-degree between the pieces. So repeat on the other side. So again, I'm double checking that the corners are 90 degrees because while I was putting on the glue, the whole thing shifted basically, so I needed to double check on all corners. So right now I'm cutting up thin strips. Those thin strips will go over the mesh screen. So the mesh screen goes on top of the frame, and then these thin pieces will go on top of that, and I will put it in place using a lot of screws. And this is something I did for another screen mesh door, and especially if you have kids, you need to use a lot of screws, because then if they jump against the screen, and they will jump against the screen, then it's less likely to break. So why do I do this? Why do I make this? And you know, it doesn't have to do with money, because a screen door, I mean, you can buy it for like $100, $200. It's not expensive, but the joy is in the creation. The joy is in making something that simply did not exist before, but also in making something that's gonna last and something that is repairable. Because if this door breaks down, I have the tools to fix it, especially since I made it with screws that I can unscrew. I can replace pieces of wood and make it good and make it better again. Now, and also, like having a hobby, having an outlet, something that you make with your own 2 hands, it's something that I need more of as I get older, and I think it's something that more of us need as well. So I've been going back to those things much more in recent years. And one of the other things, besides making things with my own 2 hands, it keeps on being writing. So I still spend time writing. It's not something I can let go of. And I've been going back to my blog. I've been writing blog articles about this, that, and the other, and it really helps me to sort things out, to figure out how I think about life, how I think about the big questions, how I think about the world. And it really is the way to get more clarity, to get a clear idea of what's going on, how you want to operate in the world, how the world works, and all of those things. And I'm using battery operated power tools, and when I was taping this, I didn't have like my 8 amp hour battery yet, and it's a bit annoying because especially when you use the circle saw, you end up switching the battery the whole time, and it drains quicker than it charges. So sometimes I run out of batteries while I'm working. Now, I like to drill the wood, and the only reason for drilling is to keep the wood from splitting. If I had screws that I could just put in without the wood splitting, I would definitely use that. But yeah, these are the resources that I have available, so that's why I try to make the most of it. And I try to be pretty precise with those drillings, because This is what you see. So if it's uneven at some point in time, you will see it and then it just looks off. And so that's why I like to measure the distance between the screws. Now with those thin strips, you can just cut 2 at a time. So I'm using the mesh screen that you see here. It was like $10, so it's pretty cheap. This one is like a plasticky material. In a future project I will use one of metal, and I'm using, as you saw on the screen, I use 1-inch screws. So that's about the thickness of both the strip and the thickness of the frame. And these are really like the standard sizes. Like I like to use like 1-inch, 2-inch, 3-inch, and also sometimes 2.5-inch. So I start at the corners and then I work my way through the middle. Now, and this just takes up a lot of time because a frame is pretty big, so yeah, you end up spending a lot of time putting in the screws. It's important though to take your time, because this is where the screen will also be under tension. So if you work too quick, it's gonna be sloppy, it's gonna hang loose, and it's just not gonna look as good. Plus also it's not gonna be as strong as it can be, because the screen also adds to the structural integrity of the whole screen door. Recently I also got a driver, and that makes a huge difference, because then if like the drill to drill holes and the driver to put in screws. Now I did decide to add a few pieces to the side. Then this happened. Oh man, it bugs me every time I see this. Like, I used finger joints. I was convinced it was gonna be strong. I used it in the past, really good experiences, and then, can you believe this? So this is so frustrating. My guess is that the wood was just too dry, and maybe I cut the strips a little too thin, or maybe I was a little bit too rough, but yeah. So you gotta make the most of it. So what you see here, this may not be the prettiest, but it's, in my opinion, the only way to save this build. And also, you know, like I said before, I'm a family man, I have limited time, so I just added a few strips of wood. It doesn't look pretty, but it's gonna be functional. And, you know, that's part of TNT woodwork. Like, I like to build with speed, style, and strength. So this is speedy, and this is gonna be strong. On the style part, well, that's the only part where I'm losing a few points, but yeah, it was the only thing I could think of, and especially given the time, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna hold up well over time. So what you see me do here is add more of the corner pieces, and that's really gonna give it the extra structural integrity. I thought about making those pieces bigger, but since we have like 2 little boys who like to jump against it, I think with a bigger piece they're gonna hurt themselves. Like this, it's gonna be a little bit weaker, but yeah, you know, sometimes you gotta go in the middle and think about other things as well. So that's it there. Yeah, and this is more of me being rough, so it didn't exactly fit in the doorway. It was just too big, like 8 centimeters, so I had to go a little rough here again as well. So that's why you see me cut off the top piece with a circle. So also not the prettiest thing, and in a way also not my proudest woodworking moment, but yeah, once again, sometimes speed is more important than looks. So what you see me do here is make the incisions for the hinges. So I'm gonna cut out the hinges from the screen door, and then I don't need to change anything in the doorway. So that makes it easy to put it up there. Yeah, so this is the first piece that's gonna be cut out, and the hinge is gonna fit in there perfectly. And over there is the second piece, and that's where the second hinge is gonna go. So it's gonna be held up with 2 hinges, and I think that's enough because the door is pretty light. Yeah, no particular reason for choosing white hinges other than this was the only ones I could find in the store. We live in a small place, and sometimes the options are a little bit limited, so you just use what you can get. Yeah, so that's it. The 2 hinges are attached, and the build is pretty much finished. So the final step now is to add the handles. So this is actually the handle of an old drawer. Yeah, and the screws were not long enough for the thickness of the wood, so that's why I used like a really wide drill to make the wood a little thinner, if that makes sense, so the screw can fit in and I can attach the handle. Could have used other screws, but I just didn't have the right size. So that's it. That's the full build of a screen door. Looking back, I would probably have gone to the hardware store to get wood that I didn't have to cut to size, because that's what took up a lot of time. Instead of finger joints, I would really like to try a pocket hole jig in future projects. I also find that the result is a bit rough, but the fact of the matter is just that I didn't have much more than a day available for this build. I hope you enjoyed this video, I hope you learned something, and hopefully until the next video.